2 years ago at KubeCon, we started to hear people talking about Kubernetes is becoming really boring. Today, I am super excited that we got to talk about Istio become really boring and predictable. Hi, everyone. I'm Len. I'm the director of open source with solo.io. I have been contributing to Istio since the beginning of the project. I'm currently a member of the Istio TOC.
Hi, everybody. I'm Louis Ryan. I'm a principal software engineer here at Google, and I am one of the TOC members for Istio and have been working on the project since the beginning. And I'm here with Lynn to talk to you today about the roadmap, which we are super excited about.
I'd like to give you guys an update of Istio 2020, and then Louis is going to give us an update of 2021, and we will open up for question and answers. I have seen tremendous progress with the Istio community last year. A very diverse range of contributing companies and authors for code contribution and even long code contributions. Amazing progress. The Istio steering committee was composed of Google and IBM. In the initial phases, we opened up the seats for Red Hat and also Salesforce as the third largest contributing company. Super excited to see the steering committee opened up 4 additional community seats as part of the election results. Super happy to see solo.io is also on the Istio steering committee. For 2020, I believe it has been an innovative year for the Istio project. We improved tremendously of our control plane components by consolidating all the control plane components into one single component called Istio-D. This has been perceived as drastic simplification by our users who operate Istio because they only need to worry about installing and configuring one single component. And this really helps with the better lifecycle management of Istio. We also reintroduce Helm because our users really love Helm. As part of the architecture simplification, we get rid of Mixer. In the early days, our users were telling us they had to disable Mixer telemetry because of the performance reason. Now we have pushed the Mixer functionality into the sidecar and introduced Mixerless telemetry. As part of the architecture change, we also introduced WebAssembly for users to extend the data plane. Our user loves secret discovery service to distribute key and certs without restart of Envoy, and we have enabled SDS across both the gateway and sidecar in Istio by default. Auto mutual TLS was also introduced to smooth that transition from permissive to strict mutual TLS, so you don't need to create a destination rule as you transition to strict mutual TLS. We've spent tremendous of our time to stabilize our API by graduating the networking API to beta. We've also bring closer the security API and the networking API, and also promoted the security API to beta. We spend a lot of effort on simplify multi-cluster configuration, onboarding services from the virtual machine into the mesh, and also graduate those to beta as well. We spend a lot of time to optimize the sidecar proxy latency and also introduce the sidecar resource so that user can optimize the config distribution for their sidecars. On the left side, you see a survey conducted by the New Stack for 2018 and 2019. As you can see, Istio was leading, but not that much. On the right side, you saw the CNCF conducted the survey as part of the KubeCon North America, and Istio was clearly leading the way. I think our huge success of Istio is really listen to our users because we care so much about our users. We find out our users have a hard time to upgrade the Istio mesh. 54% of users don't upgrade their Istio mesh frequently enough. We've also found out our users were running Istio in production with lots of critical vulnerabilities, and that broke our heart. We tried our best to roll out security vulnerabilities as fast as we can, but we don't want users not upgrade because upgrade was hard. By listening to our user, we find out Helm version 3 was the most popular way for users to upgrade their mesh. So we added Helm version 3 support so users can use Helm to upgrade their meshes. We've also established the upgrade working group so that working group can focus on solving the upgrade pain for our user. Now I'm going to turn into Louis to take through Istio focusing on day 2 operation.
So Lynn's been talking a bit about what we've been seeing in the project so far, the progress that we've made on a number of important dimensions, and also about the feedback that we've gotten from users about what they see as important for us to continue to work on. And so this year, a big part of our focus will be on what's commonly known as day 2 operations, right? Where day 1 is you're able to install the project and get it up and running. Day 2 is really, maintaining, upgrading, using the project to achieve the effects that you want to achieve, and being able to generally maintain it as an operator. And this is an indication of where we are, kind of the maturity of the project. We now have a lot of people using Istio in production, so we want to make sure that they are able to, continue to grow and evolve with Istio without worrying about, breaking when there's an upgrade. And so it's very much in the mold of move slowly and fix things. And so, that's definitely a focus for us. And so you'll see a kind of shift in the project from, in previous iterations where we were either, paying down technical debt or, rapidly building out the set of features based on what we were hearing from user feedback about what, the major gaps of the system were. We now think we have a lot of the functionality and a very stable kind of core infrastructure that people need. And so it's, while we expect users to keep asking for new features, we expect the rate of feature introduction into Istio to be much more measured, right? And our focus will be in making sure that if there are new features coming in, there are clear migration paths, there are clear upgrade paths and support paths for those features in the context of everything else that's being provided by the solution. And then a major part of this is really reducing the operational overhead, right? So the people who install, maintain, and upgrade Istio and roll it out in production, either at small companies or big companies, right? There's only so much time that those people have in the day to perform their function, and so we want to make sure that they can kind of keep doing all the other jobs and not worry so much about how much time they have to go and spend on maintaining or upgrading or debugging issues in Istio, and that the experience, particularly around upgrade, which was a big focus of last year, has gotten a lot better. The stability of the releases has gotten a lot better, and so keep driving down the effort involved in performing these functions, and provide better and tooling that helps people, particularly in the case of debugging, assess issues in the project, give them guidance on how to resolve the issue, right? So it's not that there's a bug and you have to go read a bunch of documentation, it's that there's a tool and the tool will tell you what to do, right? So much more directed guidance. And all of these things will have a big impact on the kind of aggregate experience of people operating Istio in production. So that's a major part of our focus. and we think is going to be really powerful for users, powerful for the project, and support that existing user base, which is already quite large. So in the vein of stability and maintainability, right? We've put a lot of work into the upgrade experience, but we expect to do a lot more with upgrade over the course of 2021. We've already formed a new upgrade working group that is solely focused on this issue and is driving the items that are listed here below. We've already introduced a new mechanism called revision-based upgrades, where we allow you to have more than one version of Istio installed at a time and incrementally migrate workloads, at whatever granularity you feel comfortable between those revisions, and the ability to move forward and backward quickly, right? So it isn't, right? It's kind of like the best practice of blue-green rollouts in production, but you're actually able to do it with the Istio control plane. And so for people who have really big production systems, right, we think that's very important. For people who have a kind of more limited budget, or who want to be able to constrain the amount of time they invest in performing an upgrade or doing this, maybe you can only budget to do one Istio upgrade a year, then we're working on a feature which would allow people to upgrade from the current to the current release from n-2 or n-3 or even n-4 releases, right? So that you don't have to go through an incremental upgrade where you have to go through each Istio minor release version to get all the way up to the latest, right? Because that obviously represents a decent amount of work, and so we could just collapse all those steps into what we now term a skip level upgrade. And people who are doing single control plane, maybe not using the revision-based upgrade process, that's going to really help them. We're going to introduce tooling to check your Istio deployment, both before and after the upgrade. In particular, checking it before to highlight any issues that we might see. Maybe you're using an API that was deprecated a long time ago, or a feature that's still unstable, and we track stability of features on the site. And I encourage people to check into those things. The tooling will provide guidance and saying, look, you're doing these things. Maybe you want to try and address these before you run the upgrade. And then also after the upgrade, maybe provide some recommendations as well. And we continue to invest in making sure that our testing coverage captures more accurately what we're seeing from users in production. We already have a very extensive testing harness. We test upgrades. We test upgrades across many revisions. We test and do burn-in testings of releases, right? So it's pretty extensive, but we are always trying to capture more of what we see in production and run those kind of sample workloads through that kind of upgrade flow. So I talked a little bit on the troubleshooting side, the pre and post script upgrade checks, but there will be other things that we'll do, not upgrade or maintenance related, to help people with troubleshooting, including a lot of investment in command line tools, analyzing usage of APIs or features. We'll also look at producing what are commonly termed events, where the control plane or data plane can produce events that go into a system that could be used to do reporting or assessment of what we would consider critical events in the system. Maybe there's an issue with an API that, when it's rolled out, is causing traffic to be dropped because it misconfigured where a service was, or what endpoint the traffic was supposed to be going to. API validation, right? We do a lot of work. We're tracking the features and the stability of every feature captured in the API, and whether that API is the CRDs, whether it's command line flags, things in config maps, environment variables. We treat all of those things as API, and so we'll track the usage of those and the status of those, and we'll use that to provide reports about are you using, if you wanted to be able to answer the question, am I using a development or alpha feature in production because maybe you have a policy about only wanting to use beta features or above, then you'd be able to get that kind of information. And then integrating all these sources of information into the bug reporting tools, so that if you do find an issue with Istio, you can very quickly give us the information that we need to allow us to be able to help you resolve the problem and maybe provide a fix. And then, the ongoing work that we have to make sure that as we do API design reviews for features, that we make sure that we think about and capture who in the kind of Istio user role ecosystem is going to be using this API and for what. So that will be a major focus too. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the feature process. So we did a lot of work over the last year to precisely define a process for which features could be brought in as development or kind of early testing features, graduating through the process, and what quality bars they had to hit to progress, right? And so there's a detailed checklist about these. They come in from experimental going all the way up until stable. And we track the status of all these things, and we publish the status of all these things on the site. But we do it not just for the CRDs, we do it for a variety of other things, including annotations or labels in resources for things that are not Istio CRDs, and in fact, many other features. So that process has helped us a lot. So now, you'll see that, if a feature is beta or stable, right, it has all the things you would expect for features that have progressed to that level, whether it's thorough documentation, end-to-end testing, stability testing, integration testing, upgrade testing, right? All of those things are covered. And we'll continue to iterate and improve on that process, and hopefully give people better line of sight about how features are going to progress across Istio releases. And like if a feature is experimental in Istio 1.11, what is line of sight to that feature becoming beta, right, in some future release, right? There should be better predictability around that. Extensions are an area that we've put a lot of time into over the last 2 years, really, and is becoming, as the feature set of Istio stabilizes, our ability to provide stable extension mechanisms are really what's going to drive the kind of last mile ability for people to adopt Istio in environments, right? Where, if you're a company and you have some proprietary policy or something like that, it's very unlikely that Istio is going to be able to have an API that has exact or high fidelity match to what your policy is. The policy could be based on things that are specific to your organization, and Istio couldn't really capture that. So what we've done is try to enable extensions at key points in the configuration and data flows, so that if you want to be able to integrate into a policy system like the one I just described, that you can do that, right? And so then you get all the value of Istio, and you get the policy or whatever other value add that's proprietary to your organization integrated into that. So we've been working on WebAssembly for about 2 years now. We've done a lot of work to get WebAssembly upstreamed onto Envoy, and that happened in late last year. We've been working with the community on SDKs. We've been working on improving the ability to deploy and manage deployment of WebAssembly extensions. And so now we're more focused on stabilizing those kind of distribution and developer experience aspects, and bringing the totality of that feature set to beta. So that's one dimension, right? WebAssembly is the ability to go and put in the data plane custom code that implements some policy or capability that you want. And it's extremely powerful and very flexible. We've also tried to normalize or pick key extension points in the data flow for which there are already extensions built into Envoy, and give people a more stable API experience for leveraging that than the somewhat break glass Envoy filter API that we've had so far. So recent work has made the Envoy X.Z filter available in a much more maintainable way than it was historically. And this is actually one of the more kind of useful policy extension points that we see people interested in. So stabilizing and kind of normalizing how that's used and consumed is going to be really powerful for a lot of people. We're also looking to do kind of stabilization and normalization of telemetry extension APIs. And that will be a big part of what the telemetry and extensibility working group works on. And then the other kind of major area where we see demand for extensibility is the ability to integrate into other PKI systems. Right, so Istio ships Citadel, which is a kind of embedded CA PKI system. But when you go into either big cloud environments or large on-premise deployments, it's very often that there's already an incumbent PKI or CA system in place. Citadel can work with that. At Google, where I work, we have a managed CA solution, but other big cloud providers also have their own kind of CA systems, and also we see common, big industry players in on-premise solutions like Venafi or things like that. So making sure that we can integrate into those ecosystems and work with people's requirements around PKI are very important. So I've talked a lot about the kind of external facing aspects of Istio, which as a user you should care about. We're also doing a bunch of work, or have been doing a bunch of work internally to make Istio as a project itself more efficient, to make it easier to engage with the project, to make the ability to contribute easier. Right. A big part of this is just having better scaffolding and process that makes the development flow easier, right, and make sure that all the tests that I just described earlier are going to happen for all the PRs, and you don't necessarily have to be an expert in all aspects of Istio to be able to make a useful and important code change in other aspects of the system. We've also done a bunch of things to make the existing developers that we have more efficient. We've done a lot of work in the testing environments to stabilize them, and so flakes would flakes are kind of a major tax on the ability to get your PR through a system, and we've also provided tooling to help people understand the coverage of what they're doing, but from a featuring coding standpoint. I talked a little bit about the kind of feature promotion process. Having process helps actually accelerate promotion of features, and so the experience we've had with the formalization of the process last year really helped the developers in the project. We've made a wide variety of other improvements, and these have actually paid real benefits because we see developer satisfaction going up. Particularly elimination of test flakes has made the kind of regular developers in Istio much happier. One last thing that we've had a particular focus on is to make sure that anytime we produce a document that is recommending to a user to perform a specific set of tasks, whether it's install, upgrade, setting up multi-cluster, getting a VM working, that we have documentation that is tested, right? So that the documentation is an accurate representation of what the system is actually capable of doing. And so we actually now have tests that, what I should really say is that the documentation is itself a test, and that we're able to test the documentation and validate at any point that what the system is doing is what the documentation says. And that process is going to continue. So those are the kind of core focus areas. Like any other big project, right? There are also other areas that are not necessarily directly correlated to the primary focus, but are still important for us to be dealing with, right? Because maybe there are things outside of our control or exist in the ecosystem. So one of these is the fact that Kubernetes itself is putting a lot of effort into having better networking APIs. And there are two major developments going on in Kubernetes that it would be reckless of us not to be paying attention to and to be helping to support, frankly. So one is the Kubernetes Gateway APIs. So this is a new set of APIs to replace ingress in Kubernetes. And in a lot of ways, these APIs look a lot like the Istio APIs. Like I think it's fair to say that Kubernetes has learned some things from Istio about how to model the topology of networking, how to model routing for protocols. and how to kind of compose those things to build a useful system. So several members in the Istio community have been active in that working group, myself included. And then you have the Kubernetes multi-cluster efforts, where they've done some things to enable traffic to span multiple clusters with a uniform mechanisms around transport and service discovery. And so that's something that we're also paying close attention to. Also, the other big thing in Istio, right, is Envoy. Right, Envoy is our common network substrate, and so we work very closely with the Envoy community, and we must keep pace with changes in Envoy, right, because Envoy itself doesn't sit still. And there are innovations coming in Envoy that are beneficial to Istio. And so as and when those innovations land, we want Istio to be able to take advantage of them to deliver a better experience. Two key ones here: Delta XDS, which is the ability to ship smaller configuration sets to the sidecars and to gateways to be more responsive when configurations change, because you don't have to do large state-of-the-world shifts, and also to, in some cases, even enable on-demand loading. Right, a good example here is virtual hosts. If you receive traffic for a host and the route isn't loaded yet into Envoy, you could go and ask the control plane to give you the route. And so for really large messages, these kinds of things can be important. Another thing that's coming is support for HTTP tunneling, which hopefully would give us the ability to have a better kind of networking abstraction in Istio and fix or address some things that we've had to work around with how we do tunneling with MTLS today. And then there's some other specific things, use cases that we hear about being very important. Stateful set integration. There are lots of pretty widely used, particularly data management workflows that stateful sets would be quite important. And we continue to invest in our website. We've been working to make the content more accessible, to make the structure of the website and its kind of information architecture make more sense for users. And so that's something that we continue to invest in. And so you should see some improvements there over the coming quarters.